All right, well, let's pray and we'll get going. Father, we thank you again for a night to come together, to be in your word, and to be with you, the author of it, and that you would interpret it to us tonight. That you would help us understand it and see what applies to us. And help us prepare as necessary for the weather that is coming. And we're praying in advance, God, for no loss of life.
Yes, Lord.
People would be smart, they'd stay off the roads.
Yes, Lord.
The people would not risk danger by doing something they shouldn't do, and that we'd be prepared. Lord, we thank you for the building going on out there. We thank you for the progress, and despite the regular setbacks of weather, but we thank you that you guys were able to get it all buttoned up for the snow. And we're looking forward to filling that place and being a true lighthouse out here for your glory, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Well, chapter 5 of Revelation is where we continue. And we left off. Hi, Cherie. Marilyn, how are you?
We're sneaking in.
Sneak in, sneak in. We, give me just 1 second, I left something in there. Yep, okay. We left off where, in the first 4 verses, where a search was being conducted. And for whatever reason, the focus is on the hand of God. And here's this scroll. He's just sitting on the throne and holding. And there appears to be this great anticipation to find out what's in there. What's in the scroll? And John, as he's seeing this vision, he's caught up in it because there's this loud voice calling out, who is worthy? Who is worthy? And a search was conducted in heaven, on earth, and below. And it's interesting. I mean, below. You mean, it would be Hades. And there's nobody worthy. But I think it's not that they know nobody's going to be found in Hades, but it's letting them in on it, whoever is there, perhaps, that there are things that we're just going to still keep you apprised of as eternity continues, and you're missing out on so much, but it appears that they get to find out that Jesus is worthy, because you'll see what happens next. Revelation chapter 5, verse 5, and Charlotte, would you read verse 5?
And one of the elders said to me, "Weep no more. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has conquered, so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals."
Okay, why are you crying? Stop crying. Behold, here he is, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has won. Such a victory that he is able. Did you catch that? He has won such a victory that he is able to open the book, the scroll, and its 7 seals. What made him able? What victory?
Over death.
Victory over death.
Sin.
Over sin.
And
Over
the
every
grave.
human hang-up. Amazing. He's called 2 things. 2 great titles. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. That title goes back to
David. No.
even before David. It goes back to Jacob and his final blessing of his sons before death. And he calls Judah, before he dies, he calls him a lion's cub. And if Judah himself was a lion's cub, then it's fitting to call the greatest member of the tribe the Lion of Judah. He's also called the root of David. That goes back to Isaiah's prophecy, if you remember, that there would come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a root of Jesse it'll be a sign for the people. That's Isaiah 11. And I want to remind you that Jesse wasn't born yet. But God knows David's father's name centuries before David's father is born. And God says it's going to be this root from the stump of Jesse. And you wonder, the Jews for a long time, were they looking out for a guy named Jesse? I'm sorry. Never mind what I just said. I went backwards and we're going backwards and forwards in Revelation. I just went forwards. It's backwards. Verse 6. Craig, what's it say?
Then I saw a lamb, looking as if it had been slain, standing in the center of the throne, encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. He had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth.
Okay, wild. He sees a lamb that looks like what? Like it had been slain. It still bears the marks of having been slain. And this is where people have said, I'm sure you've heard it before somewhere in the church, that Jesus appears to be the only person who throughout all eternity still will seem imperfect, though he's perfect, because he's going to carry with him the marks of the crucifixion. That's one thing he's not going to get rid of. No plastic surgery for those, no regeneration of that. And that's very interesting, that he is regenerated in this glorified body at the resurrection, but he still keeps those marks. Why? Identification.
Marks of humanity.
Sure.
Remembrance and a reminder
And it's a reminder for who?
of us.
Every time we look at him. Think about that. When we see him, how often do you think that you're going to see actually a Jesus that, ooh, you're going to see what he looks like. Now, he still bears the marks. All of them? We're not told. Just the ones in his hands and his side? We're not told. If he bears some of the marks of all the lashes and the ripping open of his skin, perhaps those are closed up. Remember when Jesus appeared after his resurrection, and you've got the disciples in the upper room, and Jesus literally walks through the wall. And Thomas, who had doubted earlier, Jesus says to him, hey, even though you didn't see me when you said it, I saw you say it, and so I'm here to ask you, put your finger in these holes, put your hand on my side, and tell me what you think now. And perhaps those are the only marks left over from the crucifixion that he keeps. We don't know. Nonetheless, that is interesting, and that is something that if that's how he stays, or if those finally go away, perhaps, once the church is finally all home. I wonder, the Bible doesn't say that, but I wonder if at one point those get to go away. And if we're gonna watch that. I wonder if we get to all watch the moment when Jesus himself is finally even healed from what he went through for us. I wonder. And maybe that's not the case. But then it says he's got 7 horns and 7 eyes. Now, what does that sound like? What do you think that means? Do you think that's literal? Because in Revelation, I'm telling you, we go from literal to figurative to literal to figurative to literal to figurative. And do you think this is literal or figurative? was John able to see that as he wrote it? Because God wanted him to see Jesus in that way because of what we're talking about, what those things represent. And then, but he knew, and the people in his time understood actually what it meant, and that he didn't really, that he's not going to actually look that way. But that literally he'll bear the marks, but he may not bear these. Again, this is one of those things we're going to find out when we get there. But let's talk about this, okay? The same lamb with the marks of sacrifice still on it. This lamb, 7 horns. Rams usually have 2 horns. He's got 7. And 7 eyes. Okay? There's a paradox. He's got these sacrificial wounds at the same time. He has the appearance of the might of God that shatters its enemies. For the lamb to have 7 horns, that actually speaks of power, it speaks of might, that it's 7. Anytime you see 7, it is this number that stands for perfection. And the Bible doesn't say that, but you figure that out. And theologians have seen that, felt that for years, that anytime you see 7, it's a completion, it's a perfection, it's the best. It's another way to say there's nobody like him. He's got 7, okay? There's nobody, he's the Michael Phelps of heaven. I mean, nobody's got more medals than Jesus. He's got 7 horns. He's got 7 eyes. The 7 eyes, it says, are the 7 spirits of God dispatched to all the earth. Okay? That comes from Zechariah chapter 4, verse 7. If you want to turn there, you can. But Zechariah, he sees in a vision 7 lamps that are called the 7 eyes of the Lord. These are the ones that range to and fro the whole earth. And what it stands for, what it represents is omniscience. It means nothing can escape my sight. See, Jesus don't have 2 eyes, he got 7. Meaning, he can see everything. It's like, the phrase we say today is, you got eyes behind your head. You know, you're right, okay? The guy's got eyes behind his head. It means, you don't miss a thing. Okay, that's, in that day, 7 eyes means perfect omniscience. Understands everything, nothing escapes his knowledge. And so here is Jesus with the first 2 titles. Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David. He is the fulfillment of all the hopes, all the dreams of Israel. That's what it says. Because those are Jewish things. Those aren't Gentile titles. Those are Jewish titles to the Messiah. And the apparent tragedy of the cross is now turned to triumph. The shame of the cross has turned to glory. And if anybody had any doubt about Jesus and what really happened to him after his death, the answer is, look where he is. He holds the highest position in heaven, knows all, has all power. The 7 horns, did I talk about that? The horns in the Old Testament, anytime you see it, and in other prophecies, a creature with horns, it's power. And I mean, because in the ancient days, like, that's the thing that, it's the ram, it's the rhino, it's the something with the horns comes against you. And kingdoms were understood, but described having power by the size of their horns, right? The size of their antlers. So Jesus has 7. Again, it's the idea that he's got perfect power. Verses 7 to 14. Any questions about that before we move on? Verses 7 to 14. Sheree, would you mind reading those for us?
He stepped forward and took the scroll from the right hand of the one sitting on the throne. And as he took the scroll, the 4 living beings and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Each one had a harp, and they held gold bowls filled with incense, the prayers of God's people. And they sang a new song with these words: You are worthy to take the scroll and to break its seals and open it. For you were killed, and your blood has ransomed people for God, from every tribe and language and people and nation. and you have caused them to become God's kingdom and his priests, and they will reign on earth. Then I looked again, and I heard the singing of thousands and millions of angels around the throne, and the living beings and the elders. And they sang in a mighty chorus, "The Lamb is worthy, the Lamb who was killed. He is worthy to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength, honor and glory and blessing." And then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea. They also sang, "Blessing and honor and glory and power belong to the one sitting on the throne and to the Lamb forever and ever."
Wild. Okay, what a moment.
I want to sing.
What a, yeah. What a thing to behold. Let's unpack that. Okay, so the Lamb, Jesus walks right on up to the Father, the only one who could approach that throne, and takes right out of the Father's hand this scroll. Boy, people must have been excited about that. And when he does, the four living creatures, if you remember from last week, it's the four-faced cherubim, these angels that are just immense with all the wings and the four faces. It's amazing. The elders, everybody's falling down before Jesus. And did you catch about the elders? Each of them had a harp. Okay, the ancient, most common musical instrument in the Bible. So these elders, so they're music people. That's interesting. Sounds like they have something to do with worship in heaven. They're the band, the worship team. Okay. And they also have these bowls, golden bowls, laden with incenses, which are what? The prayers of God's people. I loved what Jim Cymbala wrote in Wind Fresh Fire when he talks about prayer. And he says, how important are prayers to God that he keeps them in bowls? That he keeps our prayers in bowls. And they're all around him. I mean, that's a great way to kind of see it. That when you have something valuable, you put it in something gold, right? Okay, all of the temple items that were used in worship. When God said, "Okay, you're going to build me a tabernacle, and then we're going to do the permanent structure of the temple in time, and I want all these items that we're going to need, the mirror image of what we do up here, we do down there, and it's all out of gold." And for us, it's the rock. We melt it down and we can do stuff. Is it actual gold or just looks gold in heaven? My guess is that it probably looks like gold, and it's far more valuable and wonderful than any gold we can imagine. If heaven's the greater version of or place to exist and has the first and the best of all things, because that's God's house. Nonetheless, that God holds our prayers, and there are people who are assigned to that. That's interesting. I mean, have you ever thought about that? You got somebody in heaven that also knows your prayers and hangs on to them. That's all we know about it. And maybe all that's being told is that they're very important to God. And just so you know, because again, this was written to the suffering, persecuted church, God hears you, and your words to him, your prayers to him are so important. He's got them right in front of him, and he's got people that hold him and hang on to him. That are right at his feet. Got it? However, it is a tremendous image. Everybody comes together and they sing a new song. Well, they sing, first off, that they sing tells us there is music in heaven. There's a reason why we as human beings are musical. I mean, very few people don't like music. In fact, the human race is fascinated with music. I think the most popular shows on TV are The Voice and American Idol and whatever, everybody's got a music collection, and you listen. I mean, every car has a radio. Why? Because human beings like music. My guess is everybody's house has a stereo, because human beings like music. If you're like me, you walk around the house, you whistle, you hum, because human beings, we like music. We're made as musical creatures. It's interesting. Well, it's because, again, we're made in the image of God, and God likes music, and obviously music's been up there in heaven long before it ever came here, so it's not a human thing, it's a God thing. And I can't wait to find out what it sounds like up there. And what is it? What's the quality of it? What's it sound like? Oh my goodness. And those of us who go, I can't sing on earth, well, I bet you can sing up there. So look forward to that day. You'll be able to really knock it out of the ballpark. But there's music in heaven, and when it says they sing a new song in the scripture is always represents the mercies of God that are new. Okay? I want you to think about that. King David, when God drew him up out of the miry pit, put his feet on a rock, put a new song in his mouth, Psalm 40. I mean, throughout the Bible, there's a new song. Let's sing a new song. Sing a new song to God. Why? Well, that command comes after he has done something amazing, something about his mercy towards us. And so after the Lamb shows up and it's clear what he did and who he is and why he is able to have this authority, everybody busts out in a brand new song. Now I want to think about this. On Sunday mornings when we sing, hopefully you like new songs. Not every new song agrees with everybody. Sometimes people don't like new songs. Well, I don't know. I can't sing because I don't know that song. It's a new song. And we pick and we grumble about music on earth. But that ain't going to happen up there. And my guess is that when they sing this new song, they don't pass out the sheet music. You just automatically know it. It's just going to come out of you. It's going to come out of you. And it's worship. It's just automatic. Somebody gave me a CD some years ago, and it was one of the most amazing things I've ever heard. And I've heard things similar to it, and I don't want this to weird you out, because some people might get weirded out by this. But the International House of Prayer, if you've heard of that, I think it's in Florida. I think it's in Florida.
I think so.
And it's a place where people go, and I mean, there is prayer and there is seeking God, and the microphones were running, and there was a time of amazing worship going on. And all of a sudden something happens, and the person who's leading the music just starts there's this new song that you just start singing, and these words just, and it's a song, there's no lyrics on the screens. And you start to hear, everybody starts singing it. They just know it. And everybody's singing in harmony. And it's the kind of thing you just get chills listening to it as you just listen to it rise, and it grows, and it builds, and by the time, and it just lasts. And it doesn't get old or boring or weird or repetitive. And by the time it's over, there's just a hush. Like, we are in the presence of God himself. And God is just hovering over the place. And it's just this really sweet, quiet little humming of that song. And then the people just erupt in praise and amazement, because they just realized what they were just a part of. That God's Spirit in each of them, God has no problem teaching you a song. Listen, folks, Sunday mornings I teach you a song. Put words up on the screen, sing it for you, we teach you a song. And once way through, after the first verse, first chorus, you're singing the second verse, second chorus, you got it. You pick it up. How about when the Holy Spirit teaches you a song? How fast are you going to learn that song? It's in you. I mean, and when we get there and we become like that, things are going to be different. Can't wait for the day, right? So, they're singing a new song, and I want to remind you also that one of the characteristics of the entire letter here, the book of Revelation, is that it is a book of new things. I just want to remind you, there's a new name that Jesus gives everybody. There's a new Jerusalem that's coming. There's a new song. There's a new earth, a new heaven. There's a great promise at the very end that God makes all things new. It's fantastic. And sure, you read the song that they sang. Look at those lyrics again. Here's the lyrics. Worthy are you. Now they're all singing to Jesus. To receive the scroll and open its seals. And I wonder what this sounded like. What was the melody line? Because you were slain, And so at the price of your lifeblood, you bought for God those of every tribe and tongue and people and race, and made them a kingdom of priests to our God. And they will reign upon the earth. Wow. What a song. You know what? Maybe I'll put some chords to this. Try to rearrange some words so it rhymes, and let's see if we can sing it some Sunday. Remind me to do that, would you? And I saw, and I heard the voice of many angels, right, who were in a circle around the throne, and the living creatures and the elders, and their number was 10,000s of 10,000 and 10,000. He can't count the number of these things. And then they're singing with a great voice, "The Lamb which was slain is worthy to receive the power and the riches and the wisdom and the strength and the honor and the glory and the blessing." 7 things that Jesus is worthy to receive. 7 things. And I heard every created creature which was in the heaven and upon the earth and beneath the earth and on the sea, and all things in them, saying, now this is something that hasn't happened yet, but I want you to imagine when it will. And I don't know if this is literal or figurative. Does it mean birds and animals and elks and fish and everything, they're going to bubble down there? Their songs? I mean, is everything, or is it's how they respond, how they react? Does all life all of a sudden perk up and is turned towards the Lord? And in their own, whatever they do, they just start automatically responding. They start making noise. I mean, just like everybody in heaven got this new song. Does every living creature, things that howl, whales that do the whale sounds, and they do their thing, and I don't know.
Big orchestra.
It's a big orchestra, but whatever that would be, the whole earth is going to be vibrating, responding
Like
to
it
this moment.
vibrated in Genesis.
Like at the very beginning of Genesis. That's pretty awesome.
It says that every creature
Every creature.
is everything.
Everything. So it's not, don't think that's human beings. We're included. It's every creature. I guess I'd say that this is the truth right here, that heaven and earth and everything within within them, are designed for the praise of Jesus. But since the fall, everything lost focus. Adam and Eve, they turned the focus on themselves, and the universe and all creation has never, since the beginning, been unified in focus to the one that created it and us. But when it happens, it's surreal. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so the death of Jesus does 3 things for us. Because in this song, 3 aspects of his work are singled out. What were they? He made us kings. Okay? So he opens up to us royalty. Right? We've he made us priests. Again, in the ancient world, biblical times, the priest alone had the right to approach God. We all get to approach God. Right? Okay. And then he gave us triumph, victory. And I think for now it's being victorious, living in any circumstance, right? Jesus said, "In this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world," John 16:33. And so in Jesus, there's victory over self, victory over circumstances, victory over sin is fantastic. And again, there are 7 things that the elders and the angels say belong to Jesus. It's power. Well, Paul said Jesus was the power of God, 1 Corinthians 1. To him belong all the riches, right? Though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, 2 Corinthians 8, 9. To him belongs the wisdom. Paul called Jesus the wisdom of God, 1 Corinthians 1:24. To him belongs strength. Well, Jesus is the strong one who could disarm the powers of evil and overthrow Satan himself. That's Luke 11:22. There's no situation that he's not powerful over. Not powerful over. To him belongs honor. Right? The knee comes where every knee shall bow, every tongue will confess Jesus is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Right? We all give him honor. To him belongs glory. You know, John, if you remember, he said, we beheld his glory, the glory of the only Father, full of grace and truth. To him belongs the blessing. And he's got it all. He possesses it all. Everything that he does and he uses in the service, think about this, for the people he died for. He blesses us with himself, his indwelling spirit, gifts, guidance. So, I'm going to cut and paste. Let me see how much more I want to go on this. 7:38. Can we do this? Let's jump to 6. I really want to get into 6. We have time. All right. Verses 1 through 8. Roger, would you read 1 to 8, please, of chapter 6?
Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering, and he conquered. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, "Come and see." Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." Then he opened the 4th seal. I heard the voice of the 4th living creature saying, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over 1/4 of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, and by the beasts of the earth.
First 5 seals have been popped, okay, or 4 seals, a 5th, a 6th, continue in chapter 6, and then we don't see the 7th seal popped until chapter 8. But boy, what we're about to enter into is quite powerful, and for some people, it will, like it did today in a conversation I had with somebody, it'll jar your understanding, depending on what your understanding is, about the tribulation and a rapture, pre-trib, post-trib. Because in the next 2 chapters, you're going to see some things that are quite revealing. Okay? Just to let you know. So, thank you, Roger, for reading those. He opens the first seal, what happens? Okay, one of those living creatures, okay, one of the cherubim calls out and says, "Come." And what? Then what?
He saw a white horse,
Huh?
hearing a voice like thunder, and then he saw the white horse.
Okay. What about that person on the white horse?
The rider held a bull, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror, bent on conquest.
Okay, let's find out what that is. The origin of the vision, by the way, of the four horses, Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. Zechariah sees four horses. They're let loose upon the earth to deal out vengeance on Babylon, on Egypt, the nations that have oppressed God's people. It says, these are going, this is what Zechariah writes, these are going forth to the four winds of heaven after presenting themselves before the Lord of all the earth, Zechariah 6:5. And the four horses in Zechariah, they stand for the four mighty winds, it says, that God is about to let loose on the earth with a blast of destruction. John, he doesn't keep the details the same, but for him too, the horses and their riders, they're instruments of this avenging judgment of God. Okay? And to explain the interpretation, first, the four horses and their riders are symbolic, right? They stand for four great destructive forces, which are in the times before the end. And these things are going to be dispatched against the evil in the world, by the holy wrath of God. But John sees these things in terms also of actual events in the world that to him was already in chaos. It was disintegrating. And the earth is only going to increase in its experience of terror. So, the horse is the first one. What do you think the conquering is? This is the first terror that God releases upon the earth during what we would call the tribulation.
Would he be conquering sin?
He's a conqueror, and this is like a war kind of a conqueror.
Is being let loose on the earth, correct? So they're taking territory?
Sure could be. Okay, I want to think about it. When we think of the tribulation, we could say that the first thing. What is this? Can you read my mind? Thank you.
Did you take it out of the tap?
There's a big porcelain dispenser out there. Not sure. I filled it up.
The white horse, again, so much of the book of Revelation, if you remember from our first couple of weeks, it's purposefully cloaked because it's secret, and it's like sending a secret code, a letter with a secret code out to the churches, so that the Roman government couldn't fully understand what the world is this, and accuse the church of getting ready to overthrow Rome or attempt to do that. And so when he writes about a white horse, when a Roman general was being honored, celebrated because of some triumph, whatever, he parades through the streets of Rome with his armies, his captives, and his chariot is drawn by a white horse. And it's a symbol of power and conquest. That's what that is. And so John, he's still clothing his predictions, let's say, or the prophecies of the future in pictures of the present day that he was in, that his readers would recognize. The writer has a bow in his hand. In the Old Testament, the bow is always a sign of military power. In the final defeat of Babylon, her mighty men are taken, and their bows, meaning their military power, is destroyed. Jeremiah 51. God is going to break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Hosea 1:5. So God's going to take. That's a military might. So this white horse and its rider with the bow stands for militarism, conquest, war. It's the first of the tragic terrors. of the terrible times that are coming. So, can you imagine what it's going to be? Is there one particular country that will do this? Is it countries trying to conquer other countries, like World War I, II? Or will there be one horse, so to speak, one power that is just going to grow and sweep and conquer the world? And it's going to be war. We're not told. I got a guess.
What's your guess?
What's your guess? Tell me yours, I'll tell you yours. Yeah, I think it's Islam. I would think, at this point, I think it was Islam. It's the only group that right now has that desire to take over the world. Russia may want to take over certain parts of the world. Islam, its prophecies, its sacred scriptures say they're destined to rule the world, and they will do it by, as they've always done it, by conquest, and they will do it through terror. And they will sow, I mean, we're coming to it where John sees this beast that nobody can stand against, and somebody says, who's like the beast, and who can fight against it? And part of me thinks, and then again, I'm not going to take a bullet over this, but, when the Japanese were releasing their suicide pilots, the kamikazes, that was so sickening, it was so horrific for our soldiers, they didn't know what to do at first. Because they'd never seen anybody kill themselves to kill you. I mean, there's the brave soldier that, fights, but I mean, not that. I mean, that was like, I'm purposely not dropping bombs on you, I'm purposely...
Taking my plane into you.
I'm taking my plane. I mean, it's 9/11, right? I mean, that's what was so shocking to us. We go, oh Lord, I mean, they're not at a distance shooting a gun or a cannon, or I am the weapon. And how do you fight that when people are bent on suicide? Because they glorify death. And that's what's so hard on our fighting men and women. Are these people that show up, vests on, and detonate themselves. I mean, is there anything more horrific and terrorizing? I'll stop there, but whatever this thing will be, again, we haven't seen it yet. And if we thought World War I and II was bad, wait till the rider on the white horse shows up and really starts to conquer. Oh boy. Okay. Second horse. Second seal is popped, and a second living creature, because remember, there's 4 cherubim, these phenomenal angels, and now a second one, it's like each one is assigned one of these horses, one of these forces of terror. And another one speaks, and he gets the red horse, blood red in color. And to him that sat upon it was given authority to do what? To take peace from the earth, and to do what?
And slay one another.
Yeah, to bring it about that people will kill each other. And a great sword was given to him. Okay, so not only is there war going on, there is such strife, there is such destructive strife that person is set against person. So it's not just nation against nation or one nation against all nations. It is just tragic. In Jewish pictures of the end time, an essential element is the disintegration of all human relationships. Everything falls apart. Okay, now I want to point something out. We are living in a time of the disintegration of human relationships. Okay. Now I don't know if I can say for a fact that marriages have never been worse.
I think you're right.
But, I mean, marriages are, sorry, kids are, in an unprecedented way, around the world, are being ignored. People are busy in their own little world. Relationships are disintegrating. The human family, in its own definition, is being disintegrated and celebrated that it's disintegrated. It's celebrated that it's whatever you want it to be now. Things are changing. Things are changing. And what they see Jewish, end time stuff is that they say brother will fight against brother, neighbor against neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. I mean, Jesus, he said, hey, nations can rise up against nation, all these things, but that's not the end yet. It's the beginning of birth pains. Well, that's what John is saying. Here's the beginning of the scrolls. Okay, we can kind of see where Matthew 24 begins to kind of fall into Revelation. Every man's hand is going to be against his neighbor. That's Zechariah 14:13. He's looking off into the future. And so the vision John sees as we're nearing the end is a time when all human relationships are destroyed. And the world is just a seething cauldron of hate to where people are killing each other. It's phenomenal. Next horse. It's the black horse. And the black horse, and by the way, when it says come or come and see in your English, it's more like come out and make your appearance. It's your time to do your thing. All right? To drop the payload that you've been assigned. And behold, there came a black horse. And he who sat upon it had what?
There are scales.
Scales. The old-fashioned scales, right? The balance. Okay? So scale. And there's this voice that one of the creatures is one of these cheruvim, the cherubim, one of them is calling out this thing that says, a measure of wheat for a denarius, 3 measures of barley for a denarius. But you must not injure the oil and the wine, or do not harm the oil and the wine. Now, if you read this before, you go, what does that mean? Glad you asked. Okay. Again, these are signs and events that precede the end. And the black horse and its rider represent famine that is very severe, but it's not desperate enough to kill. There is wheat, but it's at a prohibitive price. It doesn't say there's no food. There's wine and oil, and that's not affected. Okay, let's find out what that means. Okay. You need to know there were 3 main crops in ancient Palestine. They were corn, wine, oil, or you might say wheat, wine, and oil. And those 3 are always mentioned as the crops of the land. It's in Deuteronomy 7, Deuteronomy 11, Deuteronomy 28, Hosea 2. It's just, those were the crops. God says, I will break the bread of Jerusalem. They will eat bread by weight and with fearfulness. That's in Ezekiel. Okay. And it's not, say, uncommon that wine and oil would be plentiful, even if wheat or corn wasn't. And that's because the olive tree and the vine, they're more deeply rooted than corn or wheat, and they can withstand drought that would wipe out the wheat or the corn. It's very interesting. There is a thought in this that, okay, a denarius, by the way, that's a day's wage. It's going to take a day's wage to buy what? Okay, and how much? 3 days' wages for what? Okay, for barley, okay. So John is foretelling a situation where anyone in this room, if you're working, it's going to take a whole day of your wages is to go for that one item of food. Okay, it's not that it's not going to be here. but boy, it's gonna be, for you to eat, it's gonna be tough. And hyperinflation. And that's enough for one person, what we're reading. It's as if this is enough food for one person. This isn't about your family and your kids. So if you want to feed them too, guess how much more work you got to put in. Okay, that's what's being described. That oil and wine exists, you might even say that it's a picture of famine that's set alongside a luxury. I think there's some things that if we ever get that here, we still got some things that, some luxury. Even though we're getting hit somewhere else. Okay, so it's one more way that people are getting hit and they're going to suffer. It's not enough to kill them. It doesn't say they're killing them. Okay, because people are killing each other already. There's conquering forces killing people already. And then food is going to be in short supply. Then the final horse is what? The pale horse, or the green horse. And the name of him who sat upon it was Death. And Hades followed him, she whiz. And they were given power over what? Wow! A fourth of the earth to do what? Okay? To kill with a sword, with famine, with pestilence, and with the wild beasts of the earth. Now, does that mean a literal quarter, like a section of the earth, like Europe? That kind of a quarter? No. Or just out of 100% of the earth, 25% of the earth, when this thing comes in, after the conquering's begun, after people are killing each other, after food shortage, there's another pass that's coming over the earth, and it's going to take out a quarter of human life, if not all life. Okay? It's going to involve violence. It's going to involve famine, enough to kill. It's going to involve disease, enough to kill. And the wild beasts of the earth are going to be set loose to turn. Well, wow. How would that happen? Why would that happen? Maybe there's no food for animals. And they start coming into the cities. Who knows? So again, this is just the warm-up in the tribulation, just the warm-up, and it's 8 o'clock. And we'll close, but I'll just say, the picture's pretty darn grim. And it's going to get worse. And I will tell you that this pale horse, when it's called pale, your version may say green, the word is kaloros. It's used of the face bleached with terror, you might say. It's where we get Clorox. It's where we get chlorine. It's where we get, it's a bleaching. Literally, it's chloros. It's white, it's paling, it's whitening. Isn't that wild? And so the idea is that when this comes through, I mean, it's the sign of like death. Okay, pale white and death. It's just wild. Okay. Is there anything else I want to say before we stop? Because boy, what comes next is wild. The souls of the martyrs is what's next, verse 9. Let me just take a peek real quick here. No. Okay, let me say this, that what we read here on these first 4 seals, they're not the first time you see them in the Bible. Because God, when you consider what's in the scripture and what was spoken through the prophets earlier, when God judged his people, it always came by these same things. Always. I mean, God did it. It's how God judged Egypt. Said, hey, let my people go. I mean, here it is. It's famine, it's death, it's It's sickness, disease, is what he does. He sends in a foreign army to invade. This is what it is. But the whole world is going to get it. The whole world. Wow. So, we'll stop there. Thoughts, questions from anybody?
I just listened to the news today, they were talking about Israel, and my mind just went to wondering. I've seen scales of our solar system. You know, if you put the sun, and then planets, you know, like Jupiter's like a basketball, and Earth is like a BB compared to it. And that solar system is just part of the Milky Way. So our solar system is minute.
It's a BB.
And Earth is a BB, and on that BB is a teeny little spot on there that you couldn't even touch with a point of a pin called Israel.
Right. Right.
I mean, the landmass of Israel compared to
Right.
the Earth,
Like Maine.
and that's where everything of this whole
Yeah.
galaxy is just, doesn't it just blow you away?
That's amazing.
Supernatural tug of war over it.
What?
A supernatural tug of war over that.
Yes,
Yes.
it's so small.
And that's
How
the great
could
prophecy
anybody
that,
care about
yeah,
it?
every, it's gonna be, it's the stone that everybody's gonna, a stumbling stone, everybody's gonna trip over as we near the end. And it's happening now. I mean, I was talking to somebody earlier today about Israel's place in history, and somebody was asking me, do I believe in replacement theology, and all, no. And do I believe that, God still has prophecies to fulfill for Israel? Yes. And that's one of them, that at one point the whole world, for some reason, just is tripping over. This thing becomes a stumbling block. It's a problem. Israel becomes a problem for all the nations. And it's a problem for a lot of folks. If Obama was still president, it would be a problem for us, right? Israel is a problem for the UN. A big problem for the UN. The UN wants world peace. And the only way that they think they're going to get world peace is if they get rid of Israel. Because they're constantly hearing the complaints from all the Islamic republics and Europe and other countries that for some strange reason are all of a sudden kind of becoming anti-Semitic again. What did Israel do? What did it do?
What do you say?
Oh, anti-Jew, anti-Israel, yeah. They're Semites. Yeah, you classify Jews as Semites, so they call them Semitic. So.
That was an area of land that the Semites came from. What was it called?
Well, Canaan.
Canaan?
Yeah. That whole region.
So it's not just Jews that are Semites.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Jews are Semites.
Wow. All right. Well, we'll let you go. Stop by the market, pick up toilet paper.
Milk,
No,
bread.
bread
Oh, gee. Before it costs.
before the storm. Okay. Want that? Julie, would you close us out in prayer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Heavenly Father, thank you for the time you've given us tonight to spend together and for giving us a time and a place to study your word. Lord, this is a blessing to all of us. Let us carry this truth and this knowledge with us and strive to know more and bring your word into the world. Lord, thank you for the weather you've given us tonight. And please, Lord, make everyone safe in the coming days. And give us all the peace that you promised us. And Lord, I praise your name. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
That's